If you're jumping straight into part 2 without watching part 1, you're about to be very confused. Go back. Watch it. I'll wait. Done? Good. So, actually, I have plenty of proof. That's where we left off. A mysterious figure. A shocking entrance. A revelation that flipped everything upside down. Today, you find out who they were and what they knew. And believe me, the truth is darker than you think. Let's get into it. Everyone turned to see Patricia Martinez approaching the group with a determined stride of someone accustomed to commanding respect. At 62, Sarah's mother carried herself with the authority of 3 decades in education and the fierce protective instincts of someone whose daughter had just been threatened. "M.O.M.?" Sarah said, surprised. "How did you?" "I've been making phone calls, Mija," Patricia said, her eyes never leaving Lisa Chen's face. Starting with Senator Rebecca Hartwell's office. The corporate executives exchanged nervous glances. Senator Hartwell chaired the Senate Subcommittee on Veterans Affairs and was known for her aggressive advocacy of military families. Then I called the Veterans Administration's Office of Inspector General. Patricia continued, pulling out her own phone. They're very interested in complaints about discrimination against disabled veterans, especially when it involves major corporations. Lisa Chen's face went pale. "Mrs. Martinez, I think there may be some misunderstanding." "Oh, there's no misunderstanding," Patricia replied with dangerous sweetness. "I also contacted my old friend Margaret Torres, who happens to be the Director of Public Relations for the American Legion. She's already drafting a press release about United Airlines' treatment of Purple Heart recipients." Hawk looked at Sarah with growing amazement. Her mother wasn't just offering moral support, she was conducting a strategic campaign that would have impressed his former SEAL commanders. But Patricia wasn't finished. "And finally," she said, holding up her phone to show a video call in progress, "I'd like you to meet retired General David Chin, no relation to Miss Chun here, who serves on United Airlines board of directors." The phone screen showed a distinguished Asian-American man in his 70s, wearing a crisp white shirt and the kind of expression that suggested he was not happy with what he'd been hearing. "General Chun has been listening to this entire conversation," Patricia announced to the stunned crowd. The general's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to cutting through bureaucratic nonsense. "Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Chun, I want both of you to step away from Staff Sergeant Martinez and Captain Rodriguez immediately. You are no longer authorized to speak on behalf of this company regarding this matter." Mitchell's face went ashen. "General Chun, sir, I can explain." "You can explain to the board of directors," General Chin interrupted, "along with why you thought it was acceptable to retaliate against an employee for defending a Purple Heart recipient, and why you attempted to bribe a veteran into signing a non-disclosure agreement." The crowd of reporters was frantically taking notes and recording everything, sensing they were witnessing the kind of corporate accountability moment that rarely happened in real time. "Staff Sergeant Martinez," General Chung continued, "on behalf of United Airlines, I want to personally apologize for the disgraceful treatment you received today. Captain Rodriguez, your actions reflect the highest traditions of military service, and this company is honored to have you as an employee." Sarah found her voice, though it shook with emotion. "General Chun, sir, I appreciate your apology, but this isn't just about me. How many other veterans have been treated like this when there wasn't a pilot brave enough to speak up? How many people have been intimidated into silence by these same tactics?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Sarah could see from General Chin's expression that it had hit its mark. "That's an excellent question, Staff Sergeant, and it's one that this company is going to answer thoroughly. Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Chun, you are both suspended pending a full investigation of your conduct and the department policies you've been implementing." The corporate executives who had seemed so powerful and intimidating just minutes before now looked like what they really were: middle management bureaucrats who had overplayed their hand and found themselves facing consequences from people with real authority. But the most surprising twist was yet to come. "Captain Rodriguez," General Chin said, "I understand you've been flying medical transport missions as volunteer work." Hawk nodded, unsure where this was going. "How would you feel about making that your primary assignment?" United Airlines has been considering launching a dedicated medical transport division for emergency organ deliveries, patient transfers, and disaster relief operations. Someone with your skills and values would be ideal to head up such a program. Sarah watched Hawk's face transform as the offer sank in. A job that would use his military skills for meaningful purposes, that would allow him to save lives on a regular basis, that would honor Isabella's memory through service to others. "I'd be honored, sir," Hawk said quietly. "Excellent. We'll discuss details once this current situation is resolved." General Chen's attention turned back to Sarah. "Staff Sergeant Martinez, I understand you're a trained combat medic?" "Yes, sir. Our new medical transport division is going to need qualified medical personnel who can handle high-stress emergency situations. If you're interested in continuing to serve others, I'd like to discuss employment opportunities with you as well." Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. A job, a purpose, a chance to use her medical training to help people instead of being defined by her limitations and trauma. Yes, sir. I'd be very interested in discussing that." As the impromptu press conference continued around them, Sarah and Hawk found themselves standing slightly apart from the crowd, processing what had just happened. "Did we just win?" Sarah asked quietly. "I think we did more than win," Hawk replied, looking at her with an expression of wonder. "I think we found something worth fighting for. And more importantly, we found it together." The reporters were already crafting their stories, tales of corporate accountability, military honor, and the power of ordinary people refusing to accept injustice. But for Sarah and Hawk, the real story was simpler and more profound. Two wounded souls who had learned that healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when you find someone worth standing with, and when you choose to fight for something larger than your own pain. Lisa Chun and James Mitchell were escorted away by airport security, their brief moment of corporate power reduced to the ignominious end that awaited all bullies when confronted by people with genuine strength and moral clarity. Patricia Martinez approached her daughter and Hawk with a satisfied smile. "Well, that was more excitement than I've had since I retired from teaching." Sarah hugged her mother fiercely. "Thank you for everything, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. That's what family does, Media," Patricia replied. "And speaking of family," she looked meaningfully at Hawk, "I think Emma would like to meet the man who stood up for her mother. If you'd like to join us for dinner tonight." Hawk looked at Sarah, who nodded with a smile that transformed her entire face. "I'd be honored, ma'am," he said. As they walked to the airport together, Sarah, Hawk, and Patricia toward the pickup area where an 8-year-old girl waited with welcome home signs decorated in pink glitter. None of them could have imagined how this day would change all their lives. But sometimes the most profound victories aren't won on battlefields or in boardrooms. Sometimes they're won in moments when ordinary people choose to stand up for each other, refuse to accept injustice, and discover that healing and hope are possible even after the darkest chapters of their lives. The climactic resolution was complete, but the real story, the story of what they would build together in the days ahead, was just beginning. 6 months later, the United Airlines medical transport hangar at San Diego International Airport buzzed with the controlled energy of a life-saving operation in progress. Captain Marcus Hawk Rodriguez stood in the cockpit of the specially equipped Learjet, running through his Piari flight checklist with methodical precision that had made him one of the most requested pilots for emergency medical missions. "Control, this is Medevac 7. He spoke into his headset, ready for departure with priority organ transport to Seattle Children's Hospital. ETA 17 minutes. In the cabin behind him, Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez secured the transport container holding a liver that would save the life of a 6-year-old LD boy. Her transition from combat medic to civilian emergency medical technician had been seamless. The skills were the same, the stakes just as high, the mission just as meaningful. Package secured and monitored, Sarah reported through the intercom. "Recipient is prepped and waiting. Let's bring this kid his miracle." As the aircraft lifted off into the California sunset, Sarah felt the familiar surge of purpose that came with every mission. In 6 months, she and Hawk had completed 47 emergency medical flights, delivering organs, transporting critical patients, and providing disaster relief support. Each mission was a life saved, a family kept together, a future made possible. But more than that, each flight was proof that their bond had been forged strong enough to withstand not just corporate persecution, but the daily pressures of high-stakes emergency work. "Sarah," Hawk's voice came through her headset, "I got something to tell you when we land." "Good something or bad something?" she asked, checking the monitoring equipment one more time. "Definitely good something. But it'll wait until we deliver this liver." 17 minutes later, they touched down at Seattle Children's Hospital's helipad with 3 minutes to spare. Sarah watched the medical team rush the transport container into surgery, knowing that somewhere in that building, parents who had been praying for months were about to receive the call that their child would live. These were the moments that made everything else, the long hours, the constant pressure, the emotional weight of life and death responsibility, completely worthwhile. As they prepared for the flight home, Hawk pulled Sarah aside in the quiet corner of the hospital's family waiting area. "Sarah, do you remember what you asked me on the plane 6 months ago? About getting coffee and talking about the people we couldn't save?" She nodded. That conversation felt like a lifetime ago, though she could still remember every word. "Well, I was thinking, maybe it's time we started talking about the people we can save, the people we have saved, the life we're building together." Hawk reached into his flight jacket and pulled out a small velvet box, his hand surprisingly steady for someone about to risk everything on a single moment. "Sarah Martinez, you saved my life long before I ever stood up for you at that gate. You showed me what it looked like to carry wounds with grace, to find strength in vulnerability, and to choose hope even when everything seemed hopeless." Sarah's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring with a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones in the shape of military wings. "I know we've only known each other for 6 months," Hawk continued, "but I've learned that some connections transcend time. Some people come into your life exactly when you need them most, and if you're really, really lucky, they stay." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she looked at the ring, then at the man who had become her partner in every sense of the word. "The center stone is a diamond," Hawk explained softly, "but the wing shapes are made from Isabella's engagement ring. She wanted her ring to be part of something beautiful and new, something that honored love instead of mourning loss." The gesture was so perfectly Hawk, honoring the past while embracing the future, finding a way to let love grow without forgetting what came before. "Marcus Rodriguez," Sarah whispered, "are you asking me to marry you in a hospital waiting room after delivering a liver to save a 6-year-old Dee's life?" "Sarah, I'm asking you to marry me because this..." He gestured around them, encompassing the hospital, their mission, the life they'd built together. "This is who we are. 2 people who found each other in the middle of chaos and decided to build something beautiful together." Sarah looked at the ring, thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The explosion in Afghanistan that had nearly killed her. The drunk driver who had taken Isabella from Hawk. The corporate bullies who had tried to destroy them both. All of it had led to this. 2 wounded souls who had found healing in service to others and love in each other's courage. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, absolutely yes." As Hawk slipped the ring onto her finger, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since before the blast: complete and utter happiness. Not the absence of pain or trauma, but the presence of something stronger than both. Love that had been tested and proven unbreakable. Their kiss was interrupted by the sound of cheering from behind them. They turned to see a crowd of hospital staff, patients' families, and even some of the medical team they'd worked with, all applauding the proposal they'd witnessed. "Congratulations," called Dr. Patricia Williams, the surgeon who had received the liver delivery. "That little boy in surgery is going to be fine, by the way. You two just gave him his life back. And you just gave each other yours," added an elderly woman in a wheelchair who had been waiting with her family. "Young man, you better take good care of that woman. She's special." "Ma'am," Hawk replied with a grin, "I plan to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve her." 3 months later, the wedding. The ceremony was held at sunset on Coronado Beach, with the Pacific Ocean providing a backdrop that rivaled any cathedral. Emma Martinez, now 9 years old and Sarah's maid of honor, walked down the aisle scattering pink rose petals, while trying not to giggle at the sight of her normally serious mother in a wedding dress. Patricia Martinez sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief and marveling at how much her daughter had healed. Not just the physical wounds from combat, but the deeper injuries to her spirit that had taken so much longer to mend. The officiant was General David Chun, who had become something of a family friend and had insisted on performing the ceremony for the couple whose courage had helped reform United Airlines' treatment of veterans. Dearly beloved, General Chun began, we are gathered here to witness the union of two people who embody the highest ideals of service, sacrifice, and love. As Sarah and Hawk exchanged vows they had written themselves, their words carried the weight of everything they had survived and overcome together. Sarah, Hawk said, his voice carrying across the beach, you taught me that the strongest people aren't those who never fall, but those who get back up and keep fighting. You showed me that healing doesn't mean forgetting the past, but choosing to build a future worth the pain it took to get there. Marcus, Sarah replied, you showed me that there are still heroes in the world, and that sometimes they appear exactly when you need them most. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone who fixes your broken pieces, but finding someone who helps you become strong enough to heal yourself. What does true love look like to you? Is it finding someone who completes you, or someone who helps you become the best version of yourself? Share your thoughts in the comment below. Love stories like Sarah and Marcus's remind us that the most powerful connections are built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Asterisk. When they kissed as husband and wife, the small crowd erupted in cheers, but Sarah and Hawk barely heard them. They were too focused on the future. They were about to build together a future filled with life-saving missions, quiet evenings at home with Emma, and the kind of love that grows stronger through adversity rather than weaker. 1 year later, the Martinez-Rodriguez family home was filled with the sound of laughter as Emma showed her new baby brother the airplane models that lined his nursery walls. David Marcus Rodriguez had been born 3 months earlier, named for General Chun and his father, and already showed signs of inheriting his parents' determination. Sarah worked part-time now, splitting her duties between medical transport flights and raising their children. Hawk had been promoted to Director of Emergency Medical Operations for the entire western United States, overseeing a fleet of aircraft that had saved hundreds of lives in their first year of operation. But their greatest achievement wasn't professional. IT was a scholarship fund they had established for children of combat veterans, ensuring that kids like Emma would have the resources they needed to pursue their dreams regardless of their parents' injuries or limitations. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the house was peaceful, Sarah and Hawk would sit on their back porch and watch the sunset over San Diego Bay. Sometimes they'd talk about their missions, sometimes about their plans for the future, and sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, grateful for the journey that had brought them together. Do you ever think about that day at the airport? Sarah asked one evening, her head resting on Hawk's shoulder. Every day, he replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Best decision I ever made. Standing up for me? No, Hawk said softly. Choosing to believe that you were worth fighting for, and that we were worth fighting for together. As the stars came out over the Pacific Ocean, Sarah Martinez Rodriguez and Marcus Hawk, Rodriguez sat in perfect contentment, surrounded by the family they had created and the love they had built from the ashes of their separate tragedies. Some stories end with happy ever after, but the best stories end with new beginnings, with the understanding that love isn't a destination you reach, but a choice you make every day to stand with someone through whatever comes next. And for Sarah and Hawk, whatever came next would be faced together, with the unshakable knowledge that some bonds are forged strong enough to last a lifetime. The end. Thank you for joining Sarah and Marcus on their journey from strangers to soulmates, from wounded warriors to healers, from individual pain to shared purpose. Their story reminds us that the most powerful victories aren't won on battlefields, but in moments when we choose to stand up for each other and refuse to let the world make us smaller than we were meant to be. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.